Hi, this is Marsha Waleko. The purpose of the screencast is to talk to you today about what students need to learn in order to use information ethically. I feel like a lot of our instruction centers on paraphrasing and citing sources, but with so much information at our fingertips with the internet, I feel that there are some holes in teaching students how to use information ethically. Take, for example, this copyright symbol. I feel that many of our students would be able to tell us that this is a copyright symbol, but information beyond that could be somewhat questionable. So that's the purpose of my screencast today, which I will divide up into two different sections. The first section is to talk to you about this website called Teaching Copyright. One of the first items that I cover with my students is a domain of a site. As this is a .org, the site is credible, and after previewing it, I feel that you will see it in the same light. So the first part of the screencast is to talk to you about the options that Teaching Copyright has, because I think that one of our ideas for being educators is to work smarter, not necessarily harder, and we do have a lot of resources at our disposal. So what I was drawn to about this website is that there is an actual curriculum. On this website, there are 5 distinct lessons, and students are challenged on the following. First, they'll reflect on what they already know about the copyright law. Second, they'll see the connection between the history of innovation and the history of copyright law. Next, they will learn about the following items: fair use, free speech, the public domain, and how those concepts relate to using materials created by others, which we ask our students to do almost daily. And finally, they will experience different stakeholders' interests and the principles of fair use through a mock trial. Essentially, all of the items found on this website for in-class use will require students to think about their role with an online world and also provide them the legal framework that they need in order to make good and informed choices about their online behavior. So this customizable plan that's offered by this website is put in place to help educators raise interesting questions about copyright technology and law. Again, these are areas that we ask our students to visit or to use within our classrooms, but I don't know that we always provide them with the background that they need to really understand those items. So, what students will be asked is, what is legal online? How is creativity being enabled by new technologies? And what digital rights and responsibilities exist already, and what roles do we play as users of digital technology? As far as the overview of the lessons and of the site, there are unit goals and objectives for students, but what I really liked was how the site laid out the curriculum. First, each lesson has notes for the educator that provides background information. There is additional information that's given about related issues, events, and controversies. The resources section gives a plethora of resources that can be used and also offers materials and handouts for each lesson. The resources section is divided into 3 sections. First, there are resources for the educator. Next, there are resources to be used by students in class. And finally, those that are to be used for the students for homework. Finally, there is a combination of games, discussions, worksheets, and homework that are designed to help advance the students' understanding of the lesson topic and then engage their critical thinking and research skills. Each lesson is divided into 60 minutes. On the site, there are copyright handouts and support documents and ways that students can also be assessed. So again, going back to that working smarter, not harder, having fabulous resources at our fingertips, I believe that this is one of those, and that was one of the goals of this website, was to create something that teachers would be able to readily use. Here are the resources that are offered with this website, and as you will see, there is a table of contents and there are handouts and support documents. But what I think is really helpful are the lists of resources that are offered. First, they offer books, then articles, organizations, followed by blogs. They have copyright and fair use legal cases. They offer P2P sites, which are peer-to-peer sites, copyright and fair use sites, public domain sites, which we will be discussing in just a few minutes, timelines, podcasts, video sites, and finally, quite the list of sites for educators. So that was one area that I felt that this website had a lot of strengths with, was providing resources instead of just a few. There are a lot that teachers or educators can choose from. Another strength that I found on this website was the Copyright Frequently Asked Questions site. For example, they give a very comprehensive definition of what copyright is, whereas our students would most likely say, well, it's stuff that somebody published and you can't use all of it, or they would go to Google. Here we are able to not only give them the definition for copyright, but we are also able to give them the list of works that are protected by copyright, those that are not protected by copyright, who owns the copyright. We can also discuss how long copyright lasts, because I don't think that this is an area that we cover very often. For example, I didn't know that there were original works created after 1977 that the copyright lasts for the life of the author creator plus 70 years. And again, this is something that I don't think our students have been exposed to very often either. One of the other areas is talking about fair use, and here again on the site is a frequently asked questions portion. So for fair use, this is a tag phrase that has come up more often in the past few years than I've heard in my 12 years total of teaching. It's really for the exclusive right to reproduce works for a limited time period. And although our students are understanding that they cannot borrow full songs for presentations, I don't know that this is something that they're really as educated on as what we want them to be. So this is another area of the website. What I would like to cover in my podcast for teaching though, and what I would teach to students in order to help them to use information ethically, is what is called the public domain. Here again on the website is a frequently asked question page, and it explains what the public domain is. What the public domain is comprehensive of are the works that are not restricted by copyright. They don't require a license or fee to use. So essentially, public domain works allows users unrestricted access and unlimited creativity. And I feel like this is something important to a lot of students, that they are able to have this freedom. With public domain works, they are able to do that. So here on the site are the three main categories of public domain works. The first category are works that automatically enter the public domain upon creation because they are not able to be copyrighted. For example, titles, names, short phrases, slogans. The second category are works that have been assigned to the public domain by their creators. And finally, works that have entered the public domain because the copyright on them has expired. And again, we go back to the copyright dates and most of them having a certain type of expiration. So one area that I think that we can teach students in order to use information more ethically is to expose them to these public domains. This website also offers a list of where public domain works can be found, and I have linked those. So first, one of the areas that I would introduce students to is the Smithsonian Institution. And here there are pictures, thousands of them, that have been released or are able to be used by the public freely and creatively because the copyright has expired. So although students may have to do a little bit of digging around, they should be able to find some pictures or some images that they can use that would fit. Another area that falls under the public domain works are images from the New York Times. And again, we go to hundreds of pictures. They can be divided up here by the images, so students can pick those. And again, these are images that are free to be used. So it's not that students have to worry about violating copyright. It's that these pictures give them that intellectual freedom or educational freedom, creative freedom that many of them seek. Another area for the public domain works are free ebooks. And with the plethora of ebooks that are being used now, these are potentially books that the students have not been exposed to and now are able to get. Another area in the public domain are the audiobooks. Students can browse the catalog by author, title, genre, subject, or language, and they also give latest audiobook releases and even the latest news. So this is one area that I would talk to students about, again, linked off of the website that I started with, that offer works and different sources that students can use freely. Finally, there are the archives here, which are a collection of advertising, educational, industrial, and amateur films. And this site I would expose students to, but I would also have some conversations with students because I noticed in the lower area where there are forums that there is potentially there are some works that could be deemed inappropriate for students. So again, I would want to preview these before I would suggest these to students. So public domain sites are areas that I don't feel that we really cover with students. We're more worried about the copyright symbol, and I think our students are more worried about those. And here we have a lot of works that they might be able to use, and it's teaching them that they can use this information ethically because the copyright has been lifted. Again, it is still our responsibility to discuss following copyright, following fair use, but this is one area that I think that sometimes we forget about. So I hope that you will go to the website that I discussed, theteachingcopyright.org, and find some sources for your subject area.